Welcome back, everyone. This is Dave from Corn Productions, here to talk about the series premiere of Star Trek Picard, titled Remembrance. This will not be a spoiler-free video, so if you haven't watched the episode yet, I would recommend going to watch it and then coming back to watch this video. When it was announced in 2018 that Patrick Stewart would be returning to the role that made him famous, I was both excited and a little bit nervous at the same time. I am a longtime Star Trek fan, as well as a longtime fan of Patrick Stewart. I generally don't do the celebrity worship thing, but Patrick Stewart is an exception for me. He's had two of my all-time favorite roles. One, Jean-Luc Picard of Star Trek The Next Generation, and as Professor X of the X-Men movies. I had two concerns about the upcoming series. One, was this thing gonna be any good? Now, me personally, I would watch this show, even if it was just Patrick Stewart staring into the fire for 10 episodes. But given that Patrick Stewart is one of my heroes, I did not want to see him fail, nor did I want to see the series be bad. My other concern was the fact that Patrick Stewart is getting up there in age. He's currently 79 years old, and I'm not entirely sure that he's capable of pulling off this role at this juncture in his life. Granted, the character of Jean-Luc Picard has never exactly been an action hero, even though the movies tried to make him out to be. But even still, he's getting a little long in the tooth. Nevertheless, he's Patrick Stewart, and if he wants to go on one more mission, then that's what we're gonna do. And then the full trailer came out. And all of a sudden, I was looking at Data. And granted, he looked a little strange, which was a little concerning, but it was Data. Brent Spiner was gonna be in this series as Data, and I started geeking out. But that wasn't all. 7 of 9 popped up in the trailer at the end. 7 of 9 being the Voyager character that was rescued from the Borg. I had no idea that she was supposed to be appearing in this series, and nor did anybody else. It was then announced that Jonathan Frakes and Marina Sirtis as Riker and Troy were going to show up in the series, as well as the former Borg drone Hugh, played by Jonathan Del Arco. So there seemed to be plenty to be excited about in the lead up to this series debuting. However, I started hearing things on YouTube and reading things on YouTube, complaints about the politics of the show, fueled by some of Patrick Stewart's comments, none of which really concerned me, and there was also talk about the SJWs taking over Star Trek. I generally try to keep the politics off my channel, but this particular charge leveled at Star Trek baffled me. Because Star Trek was always a liberal and progressive show. Since its inception, back in the 60s, it had tackled issues like racism and so on and so forth. There was an Asian and a black woman on the bridge of the Enterprise. That was unheard of on television at the time. It was claimed that the first interracial kiss ever on television was on the original series Star Trek. And I say claimed because that has actually been debunked. There, I guess, was another interracial kiss at some point in the history of television before this episode aired. Star Trek literally presents a future in which capitalism is dead, and money is no longer the driving force of humanity. They seek to better themselves, and the rest of humanity. As far as it being political, or too political, as some complained about, TNG, and indeed Star Trek in general, had always covered contemporary politics, using the sci-fi setting for allegories concerning contemporary politics. Star Trek IV: The Voyage Home with the original series cast was an environmental message. Star Trek VI: The Undiscovered Country was an allegory for the Soviet Union collapse. If the original creator of Star Trek, Gene Roddenberry, were alive today, he would be labeled as a social justice warrior. So for those complaining about the SJWs taking over Star Trek, I have to ask, what show have you been watching for the past 30 years? Now, if any of that particular crowd that has these concerns would like to explain to me, and I say this sincerely, exactly how modern Trek is worse or more SJW-like than the past Star Trek that we've had, I would gladly listen to what you have to say. Of course, there were some legitimate reasons for concern. Modern-day Trek has a somewhat iffy reputation, starting with the J.J. Abrams movies, which in a lot of people's views were not Star Trek. The most recent Star Trek series airing on CBS, Star Trek Discovery, is kind of hit and miss for me. A lot of people's complaints about that series were the fact that the technology was way ahead of where it should be, given the fact that it's a prequel to the original series. And quite a few people don't like the Michael Burnham character on that show, which goes back to the SJW thing. And some people feel that the Michael Burnham character is a Mary Sue character. I don't have a dog in this fight, but that's what some people feel. So there were quite a few concerns that Star Trek Picard would take after the J.J. Abrams version of Trek, which is wrong for the Jean-Luc Picard character. Jean-Luc Picard was always a thinker, a diplomat, and a bit of a philosopher. So the action-adventure version of Trek is not a good fit for his character, especially since I said that the character is 90 in this series, and the actor playing him is 79 years old. So having said all that, how did the premiere of Star Trek Picard fare? I'd say decent. Not great, not bad, I'd say about neutral. And I think part of the problem is that the way this series is going to tell its story is a slow build, more like a novel. So it's a serialized format, and I think CBS would have been wise to air the first 3 episodes so we can get more of a feel of what the series is going to be like. My understanding is that the 3rd episode is where the series really takes off and where the series really starts proper. What this episode amounted to was a 45-minute prologue. That being said, Patrick Stewart is phenomenal as always. He seemed to be very much in character as Picard, even more so than in the movies where, like I said, they tried to make him into an action hero, which is not what Jean-Luc Picard is. The episode's opening, which features gorgeous space shots, and the Enterprise D zooming in on the 10 Forward Lounge, which looks different than it does in the original TNG series, but any discrepancies can be chalked up to it simply being a dream sequence. We hear the song Blue Skies playing over the opening, and that's significant because that was a song that Data sang at Riker and Troy's wedding in Nemesis. Picard is playing poker, and he's out of uniform, with Data, who died in Nemesis. He's wearing a TNG film era uniform, which was not featured on the Enterprise D. The Enterprise D died in Generations, the first Star Trek TNG film. The new TNG movie era uniform didn't make its debut until Star Trek First Contact, the very next film. And by the way, it actually is one of my favorite Star Trek uniforms. Data looked very odd in the trailer, and I'm glad to say that they actually cleaned that up a little bit, and he looks a little bit more normal. Not perfect, mind you, but Brent Spiner, playing an ageless android, is now pretty close to 80 himself. I have a funny feeling that the only time we're going to see the character in this series is through dream sequences. As it stands, there were 2 of those scenes in this episode. The Data dream soon turns into a nightmare, as suddenly Picard looks out the window and sees Mars, and then there's a giant explosion, and presumably he dies in the dream. He wakes up on his vineyard in France, Chateau Picard. He's greeted by his dog, named Number 1, and you have to wonder how Will Riker feels about his dog being named after him. We see a shot of Picard opening his windows and taking a look at his vineyard, which is a beautiful shot, by the way. And then we cut to a young woman named Dodge with her boyfriend. Her boyfriend who will soon be rendered irrelevant. A ninja-like attack force beams in to attack them. Her boyfriend is instantly killed by getting stabbed in the chest with a knife. And Dodge is seemingly going to be kidnapped until suddenly she does all these crazy moves and takes out all the captors. The would-be captors, I should say. The ninja-like Black Ops force that has come to capture her makes comments just before she starts doing this that she's activating, and that seems to spell doom for them. We cut to the credits, which I rather liked. I liked the score of the credits and the little hints of the plot that we get visually within the credits, and it even has a little bit of the TNG music at the end. When we return, we see Picard and his dog Number 1 strolling the grounds. The dog has caught a bird or something. It looks like a bird, but I'm not quite sure. Picard is telling his dog in French that he will not be allowed to take that animal into the house, and then promptly lets him do so. That's not great parenting, Picard. I know it's a dog, but at the same time I've heard plenty of people refer to taking care of their dogs as parenting, and who am I to disagree? Picard is getting ready for an interview, which he is starting to regret ever having agreed to. How he acts in the scene actually kind of reminds me of how Picard acted in Nemesis just before his diplomatic scene at the beginning of the film. The interview is apparently taking place on the day of Remembrance for, I guess, the attack on Mars, which was carried out by synthetic robotic life forms. Picard is apprehensive about the interview, and as it turns out, he was right to be, as it's very much an ambush job. We find out here that Jean-Luc Picard left Starfleet after leading a armada that was not sanctioned by Starfleet to help out Romulans whose home planet was about to be destroyed by a supernova. This mission was not sanctioned by Starfleet because the armada that was built to help the Romulans was attacked by the synthetics. Picard left Starfleet because, in his view, it was no longer Starfleet. It took on an isolationist bent and was no longer doing what he thought its mission statement was. This seems to be the part of the show that takes on Brexit, as Patrick Stewart had said he wanted to do in interviews. This is pretty much where the politics comes into play, and it didn't really bother me that much. It's pretty brief. I don't think it's going to be that big of a deal going forward or that much emphasized as we go on. I think this was just to explain why Picard left Starfleet, and this is probably going to be the extent of it. Though I certainly understand people's problems with this, an isolationist Starfleet doesn't totally make sense. But I'm going to go with it because this is Patrick Stewart, and I just want to see him back in action. Dodge, out in the rain, sees Picard on the television. And because she had a vision of Picard when she was being attacked, something I did not mention by the way, she goes to seek him out. She finds him on his vineyard and claims that she somehow knows him, though she doesn't know how. She explains her story of being attacked and her boyfriend being murdered, and the paternal side of Picard kicks in. He lets her stay the night, stating that if she were really a threat, that number one, his dog, would let him know. Then we have the second dream sequence with Data, this time in regards to a painting that I guess he painted 30 years prior. This painting is somehow of Dahj, even though Dahj was not in any way alive 30 years prior. When he wakes up, he looks at his painting on his wall, which happens to be this painting, and then he goes to the Starfleet archives, where he has a bunch of things stored, such as models of the Stargazer, the Enterprise D, and the Enterprise E. We see a Captain Picard Day banner that was featured in the episode Pegasus from TNG's final season. This is where most of the fan service in this episode comes from, this one scene in this vault. With assistance from a hologram, Picard learns of the painting's origins and that the painting was called Daughter. Longtime fans of the series will note that Data actually had a daughter for a very short-lived amount of time named Lal. This isn't mentioned, of course, but I'm not sure it's totally an oversight. It just didn't come up. Dahj runs away from Picard's house on the vineyard because he doesn't want Picard to get in trouble or be sucked into the situation and possibly end up getting killed. Alone in an alleyway, Dahj calls her mother, who insists that she return to Picard, even though Dahj didn't mention that she ever met Picard. This is clearly not her mother, though who or what this isn't really clear, and might not ever be made clear. Dahj manages to track Jean-Luc Picard down to Starfleet Command. I'm not sure what Picard is doing here, or what he's trying to do, but Picard is very surprised that she managed to find him. Picard reveals to Dahj that she is possibly the daughter of Data. She doesn't want to believe it, because she has memories of growing up in Seattle. Picard, with empathy, tells her that those are very lovely memories, that they're hers, and that nobody could take them away from her. But they're not the full truth. The term android now has a negative connotation because of the synthetics attack on Mars. She doesn't like the idea that she is actually a murder bot, as she puts it. Picard tells her that the truth is more along the lines of the idea that she was lovingly created by someone. As far as Picard is concerned, this is Data's daughter, and so he will protect her at all costs. Which is when the black-suited ninja characters come to get Dahj again. They go on the run up a flight of stairs, and Picard here is pretty useless. He's 79 years old and he can't be running up stairs. He gets winded really easily. I'm not entirely sure why they're even going in this direction, but whatever. The attackers are revealed to be Romulan. During the fight, one of the Romulans bites down on a capsule and then spits acid at Dahj. Now, it actually looked like the Romulan was bleeding and spit blood at her, causing a lot of people to wonder when the Romulans turned into xenomorphs. But some have pointed out that the Romulan bites down on this capsule. It's really just hard to see. The weapon that Dahj is holding overloads, causing her to explode, and the explosion knocks Picard backwards. Picard should be dead here too, or at the very least severely injured, but he's not. I think the writers briefly forgot that Patrick Stewart is not playing Professor X here. Don't get me wrong, I'm glad that he's not dead or seriously injured. It would be a real buzzkill to kill off the title character in the first episode of the series. And I'm not gonna lie, but Dahj blowing up surprised the heck out of me. See, where I thought the story was gonna go is they were gonna kidnap her, go into space, and that would lead to Picard's mission into space, going to rescue Dahj. Instead, Dahj blows up, and that's the end of her, though some are not as convinced of that. Picard wakes up in his house, somehow. Apparently, after getting nearly blown up in an explosion, he was taken back to his house instead of the hospital to be checked out. He reveals that he hasn't really been living, that he's just been waiting around to die. But now he has purpose. He goes to the Daystrom Institute to meet up with Dr. Agnes Girardi. He goes to ask her about the possibility of a synthetic life form planted in flesh and blood. She doesn't think this is possible without Data's neural net, which was destroyed in Star Trek Nemesis. Though not brought up, though no one mentions the fact that Lore could still be around. He was deactivated in the final season of TNG, but he wasn't destroyed. It's revealed that the memories that Data planted in B4 in Star Trek Nemesis didn't end up taking. Two things are revealed that I think are going to be crucial going forward. One, Bruce Maddox is somehow involved in this series. Bruce Maddox was the guy who wanted to disassemble Data in Measure of a Man so that he could learn how to build Soong-like androids. After he failed to do so, Data kept up a correspondence with him. I'm curious if they showed this character, and it seems like they might, whether he'll be played by the same actor. It's implied that he is responsible for the creation of Dahj. The second thing that is revealed, though I'm not sure how they arrive at this conclusion, I've watched this scene several times and I still don't get it, Dahj has a twin. We cut to what seems like a Romulan space station. We see a Romulan seek out Dahj's twin, though she doesn't seem to know who she is at this point. He strikes up a conversation with her about a tragedy that occurred in his family. I'm not clear if this character is supposed to be a villain in this series or what, but he clearly knows more about what's going on than he's letting on. And then we zoom out further and reveal that we are actually on a hollowed out Borg cube. This plot point was hinted at in the trailers, but it'll be interesting to see where this goes. Like I said, not bad, not great. It's a 45-minute prologue. No idea about the quality of the series just yet, but Patrick Stewart is excellent as always, and I'm very curious to see where things go from here. I'm not quite sure if I'm going to continue to do videos on this series. I guess it kind of depends on if I have anything to say after watching, and on the response of the people who are watching my videos, how many views and reactions it gets. So really, whether I continue to do videos on this series or not is totally up to you guys. If you like this video, please like it, share it, and subscribe to my channel. Before I say goodbye, I would just like to inform my audience that I just started a Kickstarter for Day 2020, the movie. It will be a feature-length version and continuation of my Davisode series. If I succeed in my campaign, I will no longer be doing videos by phone, but by actual video and editing equipment. If you have an interest in helping out, the link to my Kickstarter will be in the comments. Anyway, that's all I got for you guys today. This is Dave Corman from Corman Productions signing off.